It was a snowy, cold evening in Kalispell, Montana. Just days before Christmas, Edward was returning home from work, awfully stressed. He knew, as soon as he would walk through the door, it would be the start of another argument with Elizabeth. But their relationship hadn't always been like this. Once, they were truly happily married. Parking into the driveway of his house, he stared out for a while before he let out a heavy sigh and finally got off. Locking his car, he grabbed his bag and the package from the back seat. Slowly opening the door, he stepped in, finally out of the harsh winds. But as he expected, hearing the door, Elizabeth walked out with her arms crossed. "Did you send the package?" "I went to the BI delivery service after work, but they closed early because of the weather, so I couldn't send it out." "Edward, you always do this. Whenever it comes to doing something for my family, you find every excuse. My family has no priority to you. What do you expect me to do in this weather? I'll go as soon as they open up again." "Right, it was my brother. That's why you didn't give it any importance. If it was important to you, you would have found a way. You could have gone early." "Elizabeth, it's really not like that. I don't know why I ever agreed to marry someone like you. Marrying you was my biggest mistake. My dad was right about you." As Elizabeth went on and on like she did every time, Edward sighed as he hung his coat on the hanger. "Elizabeth, stop. I just came home. I'm tired." Putting his bag and the package down on the table, he sat down on the sofa and tried to relax. But just within a while, Elizabeth stormed into the room, pulling out her car keys from the shelf, and picked up the package. "Give it to me. You don't have to do anything. I'll mail it myself." Edward got up, now irritated by how Elizabeth was being. "I said I'll post it tomorrow." He grabbed onto the package, but Elizabeth wouldn't let go. And as she tried to pull back, she suddenly lost her grip and fell. There was a loud sound as she hit her head on the sharp corner of the fireplace. All of a sudden, Edward noticed the floor pooling up with red. "Elizabeth? Elizabeth," he said, shaking his wife. But Elizabeth gave no response. Edward called out to her. He tried to stop the bleeding, but with every passing second, her skin grew paler and paler. "It's over. Just like that?" Edward stared at the body of his wife. He was devastated. What just happened? This was where the relationship had come to an end? Edward and Elizabeth knew each other since their high school years. But it wasn't until they were in college that they got into a relationship. They were in love with each other, and they got along well. But Elizabeth was from a very wealthy family, and her parents didn't like Edward, as he belonged to a middle-class family. Edward's father was a plumber. But this didn't matter to Elizabeth. Nothing could break them apart. And eventually, through her stubbornness, Elizabeth got her parents to agree. And despite her parents' disapproval, Edward and Elizabeth then got married. And though struggling at first, it was through the recommendation of her father that Edward got a job at the BII bank. But it was after that his in-laws began to look down on him, as the only reason he got the job was because of his father-in-law. And soon, even Elizabeth started to get poisoned by their words. You could have done so much better, Elizabeth. Not long after, their relationship started to get strained. But even in all this, Edward tried to patch things up, as losing Elizabeth would mean losing everything. And above all, there was a time when she truly loved him. But now, everything was over. What am I going to do? Edward paced around, trying to think, trying not to panic. Should I call the police? No. What if everything goes against me? Her family, when they know, they will all start blaming me. They'd make everything seem worse. But it wasn't my fault. What do I do? Just then, the phone rang up. With hesitation, Edward anxiously picked up. Hello, Elizabeth? It was his mother-in-law. It's Edward. Oh, you. Are you guys coming over for Christmas? Yeah, we were just about to head out. Elizabeth's still getting ready. She's in the bathroom. We're planning to drive overnight, so we'll probably reach there in the morning. All right then, I'll see you guys in the morning. Putting down the phone, Edward let out a deep breath. Now what? Now what? They're waiting for us. What else could I have said? She would have made a scene out of it if I said we weren't coming. But now what's gonna happen if we don't show up? I have to do something. I have to get rid of her body. Maybe, if I take her far out, throw her in the woods, tell them she went missing. But how am I going to get her in the car? The luggage. Edward pulled out the biggest luggage they had and got Elizabeth into it. With much struggle, he managed to get the luggage up on its wheels, but it was extremely heavy. Rolling the luggage out, Edward opened the front door. But as soon as he stepped out, he froze, seeing his neighbor, Mr. Wilson, shoveling the snow by his front yard. Seeing him, Mr. Wilson waved. "Hey Johnson, where are you going in the snow?" he said, walking over. "Hello, Mr. Wilson." "Wow, that's a big luggage." "Yeah, Elizabeth and I were going over to her parents' place for Christmas." "But there's still 5 days till Christmas." Elizabeth wanted to spend the entire holidays there. "Well then, happy holidays with the family. Where's the missus?" "She's not home. I'm going to pick her up from the mall and then we'll get going." "She's out? But her car is still parked." "Yes, she walked over there." "In the snow? I didn't see her." "You probably didn't notice. What is it? Have you been spying on my wife?" No, it's not like that. It's just that I've been cleaning the snow all this time and I didn't see her." Edward gave the man a look before he started pulling the luggage to the car. But just as he tried to lift it onto the trunk, he lost his grip and the luggage fell. Edward hurried to pick it up when Mr. Wilson rushed forward. "Oh, it must be very heavy. Let me help you with that." "No, I can do it myself." Mr. Wilson stood back, staring at Edward struggle with the luggage. But he finally got it in, and in a hurry, got into the car and pulled off. What's wrong with him? I was only trying to help. What a strange man. Edward drove along the icy road. The streets were pretty much empty. The weather had gotten worse, and the snowfall made it difficult to see too far. Edward looked out, staring at the pine trees that sway in the wind. It's so windy out. Elizabeth used to love the snow. Edward remembered the old days when he and Elizabeth started dating. Around Christmas, she would always drink her special cocoa from the BII cafe and get him one too. Come on, Ed, let's go. Elizabeth, it's snowing so much. Couldn't we stay in? Where's your holiday spirit? It's so beautiful out. There's nothing like warming up to hot cocoa on a day like this. It had become a tradition for them. But now, they were only memories. It's never gonna be like that again. Edward drove onto the highway, anxiously trying to think of a way. What am I going to do with her? If I throw her out in the woods, in the snow, her body won't decompose. They'll find her in the summer. No, I can't do this. I'll get caught. In the heavy gusts, Edward could barely see far. It was all of a sudden he noticed a car almost headed his way. He immediately swerved the car around, avoiding the accident by just a little. His heart raced as he let out a breath, getting control on the car again. But that's when he got it. Yes, accident. She had an accidental death. Edward figured this was the only way. He had to fake an accident. He stepped on the accelerator, driving on, looking for a perfect spot. But a while down the road, he saw flashing lights behind him. His blood ran cold when he spotted a police officer following him. As the officer signaled him, Edward had no choice but to pull over. Good evening, sir. Officer Jameson. Can I have your license and registration? Sure, Edward said, trying his best to maintain his composure. What is the matter, officer? Your taillights aren't working. Oh, that's strange. Can you please open the trunk so I can take a look at it? Edward froze, hearing the officer. But remaining calm, he stepped out with his key and walked towards the trunk with him. Edward intentionally jammed the wrong key into the lock. Seems like it got stuck. Let me see. The officer got hold of the key and tried opening it, but it obviously wasn't going to work. Looks like the key got jammed in. Perhaps because of the weather. Where are you going? I was headed over to my family for Christmas. There's a gas station not too far ahead. Get your taillights fixed there, otherwise you might have an accident. Yes, of course. I'll get them fixed. Thank you, officer. With that, Edward hurried onto the car and pulled off again. Keeping an eye on his rearview mirror, watching as the light of the officer's motorcycle soon faded behind him. The roads were now empty in front of him, and probably he wasn't going to fall in the way of anyone again. How do I do the accident? How do I make it seem real? Within a while of driving, the snow was getting really heavy, and it was becoming difficult to drive. Before Edward could actually plan things out, suddenly his tires began to slip, and the car crashed. It was around 8 p.m. when the police and the paramedics reported to a car crash on Highway Route 89. Officer Jamesons arrived upon getting the news and was quite shocked by the incident. "I saw this car before. I warned him to be careful. His taillights weren't working. Perhaps that's how the car crashed. Is he all right?" Unfortunately, the man passed away, but his wife survived. His wife? I didn't see anyone with him. Officer Jameson turned around to spot a young woman at the ambulance. In this weather, she's just wearing regular clothes? Yes, I also found it strange. The two officers went to inquire Elizabeth. "How did this happen?" Elizabeth looked at them, a little dazed. I don't remember. "Getting out the first aid," the nurse said. "The injury on her head has probably caused amnesia." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. We have to hurry. There is no time. It was a cold, rainy evening in Skagway, Alaska. Robert was at his pickup rental office by the port, listening to the winds howl and the heavy waves crash over the dock. He was planning to wrap up and head home, just when two men walked in. "Do you deliver shipments?" one of the men asked. "Yes, we do. We have a load that needs to be delivered at this address," he said, handing Robert a piece of paper. "All right, you can show the load to my men, and tomorrow morning they'll set off." No, we need this delivered before Christmas." "At this address? Before Christmas? The weather is so bad and we'll have to drive overnight. This is not possible. And above all, the forecast predicted a blizzard tonight." "Please find a way. It has to be delivered before Christmas night. We're willing to pay any price." "What is in the shipment?" "A sacred belonging of the church." "It's not anything illegal, is it? I don't want any trouble." No, it's nothing like that." "All right, let me see what I can do." Robert turned to one of his workers. "Tom, go get Jonathan." "Yes, sir." As Tom hurried out, Megan quickly stepped in, shaking off the rain. "Dad." "Megan, what are you doing here?" "Mom sent me to tell you to close the office early and the weather is horrible tonight. She doesn't want you to be late." "She could have just called. She didn't have to send you in this weather." As Robert spoke to his daughter, Jonathan and Tom arrived. "Come here, Jonathan." Robert introduced him to the two men. "This is Jonathan, our best driver. He'll get your load delivered." Robert handed Jonathan the paper. "These men have a shipment that needs to be delivered at this address before Christmas. But the weather is so bad out, and there's going to be a snowstorm. How will I drive overnight? These men are counting on us, and I know you can do it." Robert then turned to the men. "You can show the load to my men." "Sure, thank you." "What is in the load?" "Some sacred items for the church. Don't take the lorry, take the pickup truck. It'll be an easier drive." "All right." While Jonathan started up the pickup truck, the men got the load onto the back. The load is secured. Thanks, Tom. Jonathan was checking the map, figuring out the easiest route, when suddenly, Megan got onto the car and shut the door. Quickly, let's go. Megan, what are you doing? Your dad is going to kill me. Then you better step on the gas. And Dad is going to kill you anyways when he finds out about us. Tom, where is Megan? I thought I saw her get in the car with Jonathan. What? She went with him in this weather? You are crazy, Megan. We shouldn't have done this. What is your dad going to do to me now? Aren't you the least bit worried? What do you think is going to happen when we get back? Relax. What is he going to do? I'm his only daughter, and you're his most trusted best driver. And when did you even get this basket ready? I came with the basket. I thought you wouldn't have any deliveries in this horrible weather, so I made an excuse back at home and came to meet you. I thought we could have dinner together. Jonathan chuckled as he drove down the slippery mountain road. The rain only seemed to be getting worse. All of a sudden, the truck went over something and nearly tipped over. With a jolting shake, the wheels hit the ground again as Jonathan barely got control over the vehicle. That was a close call. Megan, check if everything is all right in the back. It sounded like something fell off. Yeah, everything seems fine. If I keep talking to you while driving in this weather, there's definitely going to be an accident. Remain quiet until we get to the good road, or we won't survive. All right, mister, Megan said, folding her arms. Once we make the delivery, we'll have some fun on our way back. The lightning roared in the air, and within a while, the rain soon turned to snow. The skies were now completely covered in dense clouds, and the snow made it difficult to see. Jonathan suddenly noticed a figure standing in the middle of the road and hit the brakes. Rolling down the window, he peered out, staring at the man. What do you think you're doing? You almost got under the car. The man leaned on his cane and walked forward. I'm sorry. I've been traveling for a long time trying to get a ride, but there's no transport around here. You're my last hope. Please give me a lift, or else I won't survive. No way. Come on, Jonathan. Let's take him along. We're in the middle of nowhere. Where is he going to go without any transport? You never know these hitchhikers. What is he going to do? He's an elderly man. And he looks like a priest. Once we enter the city, we'll let him off. All right, fine. Jonathan turned to the man and ushered him in. Okay, get in the back. Thank you so much. The man walked to the door, but was having trouble getting in. Shrugging, John unlocked it for him. The three began driving down the road again, but now the couple was a bit uncomfortable with this stranger. And within a while, the man started to make a noise in the back, as if groaning. Are you all right? I'm very hungry. Do you have anything to eat? Irritated, Jonathan kept his attention on the road, as Megan passed her basket back. There are some snacks in here. Thank you, child. Jonathan watched in the mirror as the man took out the sandwiches, the boiled eggs, one by one until he ate everything in the basket. Usually I pick up some snacks before I set off, but I didn't do it today because you brought the basket. Now let's just hope there's something up ahead. Otherwise, we'll have to spend this whole night hungry, Jonathan told Megan as he passed the man a glance. Megan opened up the map and looked at their route. You have to go to this address, right? Yeah, there is a shortcut. Why don't we take this route? Yeah, sounds good. Jonathan turned the truck onto the shortcut route, while Megan leaned back, trying to relax. But sometime later, she heard the man inching closer to speak to her. "What is your name, child?" Megan awkwardly turned back and said, "Megan, where's your mom and dad?" "They're home." "Where do you live?" "I'm from Skagway." "How old are you?" Jonathan was getting a bit annoyed. Why was he asking her this? "I'm 19. Is this your brother?" "No." "Is this your husband?" "No." "If you're not married, what are you doing with him?" Jonathan hit the steering and stopped the car. "All right, that's enough. You can't come with us. Get out. Please, let me stay." Jonathan had lost his patience. He got off into the heavy snow and took out his knife and opened the back door. "You see this? Come out." The man stepped out as Jonathan held the knife at him. But all of a sudden, the man took his cane and with a twist pulled out a long, sharp sword. "Look, I have a blade with me too, but it means nothing. I won't ask any questions. Please let me come with you." Seeing the sword, Megan came forward panicked. "Jonathan, stop. He didn't cause any trouble. Let him come with us." "Sir, please, put down the blade. You can come with us." Managing the situation, the three got onto the truck again and Jonathan pulled off. He was enraged, but barely managed to hold on. Unfortunately, the man too had been quiet. About a 3-hour drive later, Jonathan suddenly spotted a cabin. Finally, now we can have dinner. He stopped the truck and parked outside the cabin. They could hear people inside. "Come on, Megan." "Wait, don't get out here. This place is unholy." "Then what do you expect us to do? You ate all our food." But the man repeated, "Don't go here. It's not safe. If you're too scared, you don't have to come." With that, Jonathan grabbed the car keys and Megan stepped off. The winds were piercing cold out, and the couple grabbed onto their jackets and rushed into the cabin. But as soon as they stepped into the loud, crowded bar, everything fell silent, and everyone turned to look at them. Awkwardly, Megan shifted closer to Jonathan as they went to the counter to speak to the woman. "Yes?" "What's for dinner?" "We have meat and wine." "We'll take 2 plates of meat." The woman looked at them with a strange smile. "All right, take a table." Jonathan and Megan uncomfortably took a seat to the corner. Meat and wine? I think she meant steak. Why is everyone watching us? I don't know. Let's just eat and get out of here. No, Jonathan, I think he was right. Maybe we should leave. I don't think these are human beings. Within a while, the woman came over with their platter, but when she placed it down, Jonathan and Megan were horrified by what they saw. Jonathan stood up in shock. "What is this?" Megan got up in fright, but just as they were about to leave, everyone in the saloon got up and surrounded them. Jonathan and Megan were trapped. There was no way out of this. What were they going to do? As Jonathan searched for a way, all of a sudden there was a voice behind them. Leave them alone. Everyone turned to see the man pull out his sword and immediately charged at him. Jonathan and Megan were overawed seeing him fight them off. Jonathan, Megan, run! The two didn't stop a second till they got to the car, and Jonathan started the engine. Jonathan, we should wait for him. Are you crazy? They probably already took his life. And if we wait, the same thing will happen to us. But he saved our lives. Yes, and let's not let his sacrifice go to waste. In the heavy storm that swirled around them, Jonathan quickly pulled out and got on the road again. Megan stared out the window, looking at the saloon disappear in the distance. What is happening with him? It was around 7 the next morning when Jonathan reached the destination. Outside a church and a large cemetery. The snow had stopped, but the rain had once again begun to pour. Megan, wake up, we're here. Megan got up and stared at the church ahead. She and Jonathan walked and sounded the bell. Jonathan, what do you think they were last night? What do you think happened to that man? I don't know. I've never seen or heard anything like that. Within a while, a few men opened the door. Jonathan took out the piece of paper. Is this the address? Yes. You have a delivery. Seeing the shipment, the men hurried to take it down and into the church. They then gave Jonathan his pay and a generous tip. It's raining heavily out, and we're quite far from the city. Why don't you stay here until the weather clears up? Be our guest. Thank you. That morning, the men arranged for a room for Jonathan and Megan, where they rested and also had some food. Sometime in the afternoon, the couple came out to check out the weather. It was still raining heavily, and it had gotten quite dark. As they reached the home, they saw the men had gathered around the shipment and were about to open it. There were candles set about, and they seemed to be preparing for some ritual. Jonathan, what do you think they're doing? Let's watch. The men opened the box, and inside, it was a casket. They all gathered to pray around it. But as Megan caught a glimpse of the man laying inside, she stepped back in horror. Jonathan felt shocked by what he saw. Jonathan, it's him! It's him! Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It was a week before Christmas in the small town of Leslie, England. The air was cold and frigid. The snow had been pouring heavily all evening. As the sky started to get dark, Mary started the fireplace and called her boys to warm up. They could hear the heavy gusts of wind blowing against the windows. Mary looked out. The snow covered nearly everything outside. She wondered where Roger was. How was he going to return home in this awful weather? As the firewood crackled on, she sat down by the fireplace. when she suddenly heard a knock on the door. Expecting her husband, she rushed to open, but was surprised to see it wasn't him. There stood a man in a long coat, a briefcase in his hands, trembling in the cold. "Are you Mary Campbell?" he asked in a shaky voice. "Yes, but I'm sorry I couldn't recognize you." "I'm Dr. Harold Wilson. I've come all the way here from Birdford in search for you." As the freezing winds rushed into the house, Mary ushered the doctor in. "Please, come in. The snowstorm has been quite rough all day." She escorted the doctor towards the fireplace, where he sat down trying to get warm. It seemed the man had been out in the storm for a long time. Mary hurried into her kitchen and brought out some soup she had made for their dinner. "This will help you warm up." "Thank you." As Dr. Wilson had his soup, Mary was about to ask what brought him here. But then there was another sudden knock on the door. "I'll be right back." Mary opened the door to see Roger was finally back. She quickly allowed him in and took his jacket. Roger looked exhausted. "The weather has been horrible today, and these winds, not a single soul is out. The entire market had been nearly empty. I made only a few sales today." "You should have returned earlier." "I closed the shop nearly an hour ago, but it took so long to come home in the snow." As Roger took off his shoes, he noticed a man sitting by the fireplace. "Who is he?" "Dr. Harold Wilson. I don't know why he's here, but he came searching for me, but he addressed me as Campbell." "Perhaps he knew your father." "That's what I thought." Mary and Roger went to greet the man. "Dr. Wilson, this is my husband Roger. Nice to meet you." The couple took a seat opposite to him as Roger asked, "So what brings you here, doctor, at this time and in this weather?" Dr. Wilson looked at Mary. "I'm here on behalf of your uncle, Hugh Campbell." A look of displeasure instantly appeared on her face before she looked away in rage. "Then you can leave my house, doctor. If I knew, I wouldn't have let you enter." Dr. Wilson slowly nodded. "I understand why you might be upset, but please hear me out." "No, I don't need to hear anything. You can leave, right now." Mary was about to get up when Roger held her back. "Mary, he has come all the way here in this weather. Let's see what he has to say." "Roger, you know why." "Mary, are we going to let out a guest in the storm? There isn't even any transport around here. How will he travel anywhere like this?" Mary let out a sigh listening to her husband and sat back down. Roger then finally asked, "Doctor, what brings you here?" "I'm from the town of Birdford. I practice medicine there, and I have my own chamber. It all started about a week ago. It was a cold, snowy evening, just like today. Dr. Harold Wilson was a very well-known and respected doctor in the small town of Birdford. The townspeople were all quite fond of him and knew him as an honest and kind man, as he was always helping out others. Hence, many people came to his chamber and sometimes visited him at his home. It was a week ago. In the snow and wind, Dr. Wilson was returning home from his evening walk. As he reached his gate, he saw a man standing there, waiting and looking in. Upon seeing Dr. Wilson, he hurried to speak with him. "Dr. Wilson, I've come from the Campbell mansion. Mr. Hugh Campbell is awfully ill and would like you to come visit him urgently." "You have come all the way from the mansion of Hugh Campbell?" "Yes, doctor. He has sent me to you. It's a request that you please visit him. But in this weather..." "Doctor, he is very unwell." Dr. Wilson looked at the skies as he let out a misty breath. All right, but how do you plan to return in this weather? I'm not going to return to the mansion tonight. I have some work at the marketplace. With that, the man left, and Dr. Wilson went inside and called his housekeeper. Thomas, get the horse carriage ready. We have to go to the Campbell mansion. But sir, the Campbell mansion is quite far from here, and it has already begun snowing. It seems like the weather will only get worse. Thomas, a man is in pain and is waiting for us, hoping that we will relieve him from his pain. We must go. Yes, sir. Feed the horse properly and put the heavy saddle blanket on him. We should head out as soon as possible. Yes, sir. The winds had picked up severely by the time Dr. Wilson and Thomas left the house. And along the way, the weather did only worsen. The grounds were covered in a thick layer of snow, which had slowed the horse down significantly. However, they managed to reach near the Campbell mansion in about an hour's journey. But it was as they reached just a distance from the mansion, suddenly the carriage halted. Concerned as to what happened, Dr. Wilson got down. What is the matter, Thomas? The horse suddenly stopped, sir. I can't get him to move. It seems like he's scared of something. Did you not feed the horse properly before setting off? Yes, sir, I did. Dr. Wilson looked out down the road that led through the woods ahead. The snow made it difficult to see, but he could vaguely make out the Campbell mansion through the slight moonlight that shone through the clouds every now and then. I can see the mansion from here. I'll walk the rest of the way. Calm the horse down and come meet me there. Yes, sir. In the heavy storm, Dr. Wilson grabbed onto his briefcase and pushed against the winds as he walked off. It took about half an hour till he reached the main gates of the mansion. However, he could see no security guards or any other servants there. The gate was unlocked. So Dr. Wilson entered and walked towards the mansion. As he was about to knock on the door, he realized it was left ajar. Strange. He slowly creaked the door open. It was tremendously dark inside. He could barely see anything. Is anyone home? His voice echoed down the hall. There was no reply. Dr. Wilson took out a match from his pocket and lit it, barely able to make out a staircase ahead of him. Mr. Campbell, are you here? He said, walking forward, when he suddenly heard a voice from the upper floor. Dr. Harold Wilson, I'm sorry I can't come down. This sickness has taken a heavy toll on me. I sent my servant to deliver my message to you. He has probably gone to the market after meeting you, and I don't have any other servants at the mansion. Would you please come upstairs? Hearing Mr. Hughes' call, Dr. Wilson slowly walked up the dark stairs, and with much difficulty discovered the room open at the end of the hall. As he made his way inside, he heard Mr. Hugh again. Doctor, there was a candle on the desk by the window. Dr. Wilson could only see as much as the light from the window allowed. To the far corner, the man lay on his bed. Slowly stepping towards the window, Dr. Wilson found a thin candlestick on the table and lit it. But even then, it barely helped to light up the room. Please have a seat, Mr. Hugh said. Mr. Campbell, how are you living all alone in this mansion? Doctor, this is why I have called for you. Maybe I won't survive, and if anything happens to me, I have a request. What is it? In the desk drawer beside you, there is a will. If anything happens to me, please hand it over to my niece, Mary Campbell, so she can inherit all my property. You're leaving all your property to your niece? What about your wife and children? Yes, doctor. For once, I wanted to do something right in my life. I'm a sinner, and I want to redeem my sin. What sin? I was raised in a very wealthy household with my father and my elder brother William. Growing up, I had always been jealous of my brother, as my father often preferred him over me. At the time of my father's death, my brother wasn't present. He was out of the country. But on his deathbed, my father distributed all his property between my brother and I equally. Unfortunately, William passed away before he could return to England, and he couldn't take control of his portion of the wealth. He was a married man and had 2 children, Mary and James. Soon after his demise, his wife Anne brought their children to England and visited me. His wife asked for William's share of inheritance, but I lied to her. I told her our father had left everything to me. But how could that be? How could Mr. Campbell do something like this? What about his grandchildren? You see, my brother William is dead. How do I know that these children of yours are his children? What? How can you say that? That day, I humiliated her in front of her children and sent them away. After William's demise, they had no one, and Anne was struggling to raise their children, and they ended up leading a very difficult life. It was during that time that my brother's only son, James, fell ill and passed away in sickness. When I received the news, deep down inside, I felt glad. I had no worries, for now there was no one who might make a claim over my property. And while Anne and Mary were struggling in their lives, I was enjoying my life with my wife and children. But soon I realized my happiness was no more than a delusion. My wife had been unfaithful to me, and I couldn't be sure if my children were indeed my children at all. And soon, I became a mockery in my own town. That's when I divorced my wife, and she married her lover. And my children, they became distant from me. So I left the city and moved to this small mountain town to live the rest of my life in isolation. I realized whatever happened to me was the divine punishment for what I did to the family of my own brother. And to redeem myself, I'm leaving everything to my niece, hoping she would forgive me for what I have done. As long as I lived, I was in hell. I don't want to burn in hell, even after my death. Listening to Mr. Hugh, Dr. Wilson said, "Mr. Hugh, you have done something awful, but you have also been through a lot. Let's not be negative. Let me do your checkup. Perhaps you will recover soon, and you can give this to your niece yourself." With that, Dr. Wilson picked up the candle and walked towards Mr. Hugh. But as the darkness lit up, and Dr. Wilson neared his bed, he was startled by what he saw. Dr. Wilson stared at a skeleton laying on the bed in place of Mr. Hugh. Dropping the candle in fright, he stumbled back in the utter darkness. What had he just seen? Gathering his composure, Dr. Wilson tried to think straight. Was this all a dream? Or a delusion? He rushed to the desk and lit another candle. Opening the drawer, he picked up the pieces of paper. The will of Hugh Campbell. In his horror, Dr. Wilson grabbed all his things and ran out of the mansion, where he heard his horse neighing by the gate. As Thomas struggled to get hold of the horse, Dr. Wilson hurried towards them. "Thomas, do you know the man who came to the house this evening?" "Yes, but he's not a man of good reputation." "Do you know where he lives?" "Yes, sir." It was late that night, Dr. Wilson arrived to the house of the man who had brought him news of Hugh Campbell. Upon opening the door, the man looked distraught seeing him. "May we speak?" "When did you last see Mr. Hugh Campbell?" "It was a few nights ago. I knew he lived alone, and the Campbell mansion had no servants. It had been practically deserted for the longest time. I had gone there to steal, but when I went inside, I heard a voice. It was his voice. Unless you want to be in prison, go and send my word to Dr. Harold Wilson and call him to the mansion, and that vase will be yours." After speaking with the man, Dr. Wilson realized what he had experienced was no delusion. It had been real. So, I spoke to his spirit. It was the soul of Mr. Hugh Campbell. Dr. Wilson looked at Mary. "Since then, I've been searching for you. I found out your mother passed away and you got married and were settled here in Leslie." Dr. Wilson took out the will of Hugh Campbell and handed it to Mary. "Your uncle has left everything to you. He lived a miserable life, and even after his death, he couldn't have peace for what he did to your family. It was his spirit that was seeking redemption." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. This is Miss Tremblay. She lives a peaceful life in a duplex home in Appleton, Wisconsin. Early every morning, she wakes up to the sounds of the chirping birds, sits by her window with a cup of hot tea in the chilly winter breeze, and enjoys the view of the Fox River not too far away. Until the alarm sets off in the room straight underneath hers, ruining the whole atmosphere. Who wakes up listening to that every morning? Mrs. Tremblay lived on the second floor of her home, and she rented out the first floor to college kids who went to the nearby BII University. Zoe and Sarah moved in to Mrs. Tremblay's house about a month back at the start of their semester. The rent was reasonable and all was fine if the rules were followed. But the house was old, and 2 weeks into staying there, the girls realized the issues with the plumbing and the heat, which Mrs. Tremblay could care less about. But hey, they could even things out by playing in her blind spot. Mrs. Tremblay didn't like too much commotion. But Zoe and Sarah were party fans. "Did you stuff the windows with pillows?" "Yeah." "All of them? Did you cover the ventilators? Those things are sneaky." Mrs. Tremblay didn't like outsiders in the house after sunset. But Sarah somehow always got cravings for takeout sometime around 9. And well, the old lady was probably sleeping, so why not? "Are you crazy? You were going to ring the bell? I told you on the phone not to ring the bell." "Dude, you scared another one off. Again. We're running out of pizzerias. No one wants to come to this address anymore." Run. Zoe and Sarah were fun-loving, a bit carefree and a bit impulsive, but at least they didn't burn down the house and paid their rent on time, so far. What more could a landlady ask for? Another tenant. Zoe and Sarah knew the perfect person to move in with them. "This is my friend and my roommate, Zoe." "Zoe, this is my friend, Alex. He's new to Wisconsin." "Oh, that's cool. How do you like it here?" "Don't tell me about it. I never thought living in a dorm would be so cramped up. I was thinking about getting my own place." "Really? Well, you can move in with us. I mean, our landlady has another vacant room." "That would be great. Thanks." "What are you doing, Zoe? Why would you ask a guy to live with us?" "Oh, you'll see." So Sarah introduced Alex to Mrs. Tremblay. Mrs. Tremblay was a bit confused seeing the girls bring in a guy to move in with them, but Alex looked like a decent guy, so she agreed. I thought you two were those kind of girls. What did she say? Nothing, she's just like that. Alex moved in a little excited to be living with two beautiful girls, but he soon found himself on the run, doing this for Zoe and that for Sarah, and basically everything from washing the dishes to dropping off the laundry and vacuuming the house. Alex, could you open this jar for me? I've been trying for so long. Sure. Wow, it was that easy? You're really strong. My arms are really hurting. Can you wash the dishes? Okay. Alex, are you going out? That's great. Can you bring me a few things from the groceries? A few things? You have space for more? Thanks, you're so sweet. Here's my one. Oh no, the toilet's clogged. Again. Now what? Alex, can you help us out, please? Yeah, we're gonna need some elbow grease for this, and you're so strong. Be our hero, Alex. Unclog this for us. It was true. Mrs. Tremblay was a bit judgmental. She thought Alex was one of the girls' boyfriends, but come a couple weeks into keeping an eye on them, she realized Alex wasn't dating either of them. They were all just roommates. But how? Why? I knew it. Those girls are definitely one of those. Alex was reaching the point of exhaustion. Things couldn't go on like this. He needed to learn how to say no. But apparently, saying no wasn't quite that easy. Alex, I'm really hungry. Can you cook for us? I was really craving some pasta. Say no, Alex. Say no. I would, but I'm really tired after work. I know, right? I was thinking about getting pizza. Could you go out and bring some? Why don't we order? The pizzeria is not picking up for some reason. Who knows why? Alright, I'll go get pizza. What? You wouldn't cook for me, but you're getting her pizza? I knew it. You're in love with her. What? What? Alex? Is that true? No, I'm not. It's just easier getting pizza. But Zoe is saying, and Zoe is always right. Yeah, you're so in love with her. You're always choosing her over me. What? When did I choose her? This is the first time I'm getting pizza. Hey, keep the pizza out of this. Don't give him a hard time just because he picked me. Wait. No. I'm not in love with you. Of course you're not. This was awfully embarrassing. Whenever Alex would say something even close to no, the girls would corner him, and it always came down to alleging him of loving either of the two. Luckily, Alex was quick to catch on. So you like to play games? The real game will begin now. Why would you pick up Zoe's laundry and not mine? So you're in love with her now? What? This is so unexpected. First it was her and now me. How long have you felt this way, Alex? What, Alex? Answer her. Since I first met you. But I love Zoe too. She's pregnant with my child. She just doesn't want to tell you. What? No, I'm not. You can lie about our relationship, but you can't hide what's in there. What is he talking about? I know you're hurt, but just because she's pregnant doesn't mean I don't love you too. The girls were freaking out already, and Alex's chores had gone down to none. But he still had more coming. It was his time to have fun now. It's 8 a.m. I'm getting late. Who's in the bathroom? It's Sarah. Sarah, let me in. You know how much I'm in love with you. Let's take a shower together. What? No, we aren't. What do you mean we aren't? But Zoe was saying, and Zoe is always right. And it wasn't long before the girls decided to own up to their little game. Okay, we were just playing with you. Let's have truce. Yeah, we got you, you got us, we're even. Alright, truce. And so, the friendship began. Things were now equal between the three. No one was taking advantage of anyone. But at the end of the day, Alex was a nice guy, so he ended up doing a lot of things that he normally wouldn't. Alex, can you hold the camera for me? Thanks. What are you doing? It's a TikTok. Stop staring at me, you're making me nervous. Hey, you were looking like a freak when you were doing it, but it turned out good. Things were going pretty smooth in the house now. Everyone was getting along with everyone. And in all this, a heavy snowstorm hit town, and all schools and colleges got shut down for a week, and everyone was advised to stay at home. At first, it seemed like a winter wonderland vacation, playing with the snow and watching old movies. Hey, you guys ever tried pouring boiled water over your head? Are you crazy? Sarah stomped out into the snow with a mug of boiling water, as Alex and Zoe watched in bewilderment. She smirked before she threw the boiling water right in the air above her head, watching it instantly freeze into a white puff of snow. Science can be so hot sometimes. And just like that, day one went by fine. Until they got news that they weren't going to have internet due to the bad weather. And what made it worse was Mrs. Tremblay never turned on the thermostat properly, and it was way too cold in the house. Let's turn on the electric heater. For how long? The bills are gonna go up. Yeah, now there's no heat, no internet, and next there won't be electricity. Maybe you should have told Mrs. Tremblay Zoe's in love with her. When another day went by like this, the three had just about enough of the winter wonderland vacation. We're not going to make it without Wi-Fi. I'm serious, you guys, I'm freezing. We have to do something. Let's put the fireplace on. We can break that old wooden chair we have. 'Cause we're surviving out in the Alaskan Open, right? I'll go get some coffee. So the roommates broke apart an old wooden chair and set it on fire in the fireplace and huddled around it. You know what's better than this? Body warmth. Oh please, Alex. That old lady was right. You two are probably one of those. How many years has it been again since we've been trapped here? 3 years. Days. It's been days. I'm bored. You guys got any ideas? Well, it's getting dark out, the fire is going, the winds are howling. It's the perfect atmosphere to have a little fun. Let's play a Ouija. We don't even have an Ouija board, genius. That's alright, we don't really need one, genius. Alex grabbed a piece of the charcoal from the fireplace and drew the alphabets on the floor. And what about the planchette? We can make that too. Zoe took 3 pieces of the burnt wood, stuck them together, and placed them straight down on the floor as the roommates sat around it. Alright, I'll go first. Are there any spirits here? No? Maybe? Let's ask the number one question everybody wants to know. Are Zoe and Sarah one of those girls? Alex was about to pull the planchette onto the yes when Sarah pushed him down. You know we have to move it together, right? All of a sudden, the electricity went out. Look what you did. The spirits are angry now. Alex laughed as he got back up. That's when something bizarre happened. The planchette began moving on its own. Dude, what just happened? The spirits are here. Come on, now we'll know your guys' secrets. Yeah, of course, the spirit is here. Alright, when is Alex going to die? Tonight. Is it going to be because of the cold? No. Then how? Murder. I'm going to kill him. All 3 of the roommates let go of the planchette, freaked out. Dude, this isn't even funny anymore. One of you did something. It wasn't me. It was Alex. You did something. Sarah swiped the charcoal off with her hands and threw the planchette into the fire. This is evil. The whole thing was evil. Whatever it is, I'm gonna go check the fuse now. It's getting creepy in here. The roommates were a little freaked out, but when the lights started working again, things felt a whole less creepy, and they all went to bed that night. The next morning, Sarah and Zoe woke up, got ready, and came to the kitchen expecting to see Alex there. But he wasn't. They called him from outside his room, but he didn't answer. Break it open. Sarah and Zoe broke off the knob, horrified to see Alex lifeless in his room. How did this happen? You think it was because of last night? The girls were shaken. They called the police immediately, and it was just within moments that the police and Mrs. Tremblay arrived. We don't know how it happened. We were just playing with an Ouija board last night, and the girls told the police everything, but the police didn't believe them. It all sounded like nothing more than stories. Mrs. Tremblay, however, quivered in fear, hearing what happened and seeing Alex's condition. Sarah and Zoe couldn't explain anything, but she knew what happened here. It was before Alex had rented the room, before Zoe and Sarah moved in. Mrs. Tremblay had rented this floor to a young woman named Amelia Johnson. She too was a college student, independent and mature, and Mrs. Tremblay thought she would have no issues with this tenant of hers. But she soon realized the young woman wasn't quite happy in her life. She often used to hear her crying by her window downstairs. How could he do this to me? Mrs. Tremblay knew she was depressed. She never expected Amelia to take such drastic steps. When Amelia didn't leave for work like she usually did, Mrs. Tremblay went to check up on her, only to find her lifeless in her room. She had taken her own life. Mrs. Tremblay's first instincts were to call the police, but she stopped, staring at the young woman just laying there. It was over for her, but not for Mrs. Tremblay. Mrs. Tremblay had to worry about her own life. If this news spread, no one would want to rent this place out of their superstitions. This was the only source of income for her, and she couldn't give it away. It was none other than Mrs. Tremblay who had buried Amelia in her own backyard. But perhaps it was far from any solution, because neither did Amelia get any relief by ending her life, nor did Mrs. Tremblay find a way for her own problems. It was her. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. I gotta go, man. Go ahead, do it here. I'll be right back. Hey, lovely. How about a free treat tonight? Just the three of us. Sorry, darling, I only treat men. We're men. What do you want, man? The devil. Your face. After spending a long night at the hospital, suffering from a dislocated shoulder, Joseph and his wife, Bridget, were now at the police station. Bridget impatiently gawked at the people before her, who had been talking to the officer for nearly an hour. Finally, seeing them get up to leave, she quickly pushed Joseph. Let's go. Are you gonna sit here all day? Sweetheart, we didn't need to do this. You don't have to tell me what we need to do. What happened? My name is Joseph Sanders. I work at the BII hospital. Oh, so you're a doctor? He's not a doctor, he's a dermatologist. Joe, stop beating around the bush and tell him why we're here. With a deep sigh, Joseph said, We live in a quarter about 20 minutes away from the hospital. Joseph and Bridget were both from a small town in Montana. After facing many obstacles and struggling to finish his doctorate, Joseph got a job at the BII hospital in his hometown. It was while he was studying there that he and Bridget met, and just 2 years into their relationship, got married. However, Bridget had only married him in greed for his status as a doctor. But after their marriage, when she realized he was a dermatologist, she became disappointed and looked down on him. She regretted her decision, and hence their relationship wasn't at its best. But despite everything, Joseph loved her and always tried to make things work. Years later, Joseph got a transfer to another hospital branch in the city. As the head of the dermatology department, he thought this would be his big break, but things didn't turn out as he hoped. After moving here, he realized how bad the neighborhood was. The crime rate in this area was very high. In fact, many a times, Joseph witnessed bodies being brought into the hospital, to which no one took any claim. Now, back at home, instead of their relationship getting better, it only got worse. And in all this, it was last night, in the snow and sleet, Joseph and Bridget were returning home around 9:30 p.m. when they were halted by some goons who snatched from them all their things. The bag, your phone, wallets, handed over. Take it, just please, leave us alone. What a wuss. You're his girl? What is a beautiful woman like you doing with a loser like him? Don't waste your life with him, baby. Come with me, we'll turn your life around. We'll make you happy in ways he could never make you. It was as the men were leaving, Joseph, in a hurry to get away, slipped on the ice and dislocated his shoulder. What a loser. Bridget, I think we need to go to the hospital. Pathetic. With Bridget's help, they returned to the hospital, where Joseph was admitted. Here are some painkillers. Take them and try to sleep. You'll be better in the morning. It better be. We need to go and report this. Report? No, sweetheart. That's not a good idea. These people, they might try taking revenge. You don't know what they're capable of. Joseph was reluctant to come to the police station. But the next morning, Bridget wouldn't listen to anything and brought him. My coat was right here. How could it go missing? Someone stole my coat. Look, you got a job in a hospital where even patients get their things stolen. So they didn't physically hurt you? No, sir, they didn't. They took your bag, wallet, and phone, correct? Yes, sir. The officer called one of his assistants. Roger, can you bring in the evidence from last night? His assistant brought out something familiar. Are these your things? Yes, this is it. But how did you find it? Last night, while you were in the hospital, someone slashed them all, sliced their faces off. Goodness, how horrible. Who could do something like this? They deserved it. We're trying to get to the bottom of the case, and unfortunately, we won't be able to give you your items until we run some tests as part of the investigation. After that, we'll inform you and you can take your things back. All right, sir. Without much more they could do about the situation, Bridget and Joseph returned home. What happened last night? I don't know where he came from, but I saw him. He doesn't have a face. It's like his face was melted by acid. He had no nose, no mouth. The following 2 days, Joseph was at home trying to recover from the persistent pain. He was having trouble wearing his clothes, eating food, or even picking things up. And despite seeing his struggle, Bridget was always moody and didn't help him. On Friday afternoon, Joseph was scheduled for an X-ray, but he was a little nervous to go. "Sweetheart, are you really not coming with me to the hospital? Why do you need me to go? Because you're scared of being mugged again? I can't sit in the waiting room for hours. You can go yourself." So Joseph went for his X-ray alone that afternoon, and after a long 5 hours, he returned home exhausted at around 7 p.m. But when he stepped inside, he was confused to see the house was empty. Bridget, where did she go? 2 days passed since Bridget had gone missing. Joseph tried contacting her relatives and friends, but no one knew anything about her. Alas, hopelessly, he went to the police. "Officer, my wife has gone missing." Bridget didn't know how she got here or who had brought her. But when she woke up, she was horrified to find herself shackled in a filthy, putrid room. She tried shouting, but the windows were boarded up. She tried breaking off the shackles, but failed. She tried pulling her hands out, but only injured herself and gave up. The chains were so short, she couldn't even reach the window. In hopelessness, she leaned on the walls, shivering in the cold and extremely hungry. When suddenly, the door creaked open, and a man stepped inside. Please don't hurt me. I'll do anything you want. You don't have to force me." Bridget was horrified when she looked upon his face. He brought in a bucket and threw it next to her, and a can he opened with a knife and threw it to her feet. Bridget was disgusted by the cold, raw tuna, but she was so hungry. In the middle of the night, when the temperature had fallen and she couldn't bear the cold anymore, she picked it up and ate. Days after days went by. The man kept her locked up. He neither spoke to her nor did anything to her, but Bridget wasn't suffering. The walls were growing fungus. She couldn't even lean back. There were cockroaches and mice constantly crawling around her. Every night, the man returned to replace the bucket, which was for Bridget to relieve herself, and left throwing her a can of tuna. Bridget's clothes had become spoiled. Her skin started developing a rash. She couldn't even breathe properly in the horrible stench. As she lay in the cold each night, she remembered Joseph and wondered, would she ever return home again? 3 months had passed since Bridget had gone missing. Joseph had contacted the police many times, but they couldn't find her. Living in their home, now all alone, Joseph felt so depressed and grieved. But it was late one night. Joseph heard a faint knock on his door. He opened up, shocked to see she had become pale and emaciated. There were bruises and rashes all over her body. Her condition was painful to see. "Bridget?" She began crying as she looked at him. "He kept me locked up all these days, Joe, But tonight, he unlocked me and just let me go. Joseph immediately took her in. After a long time, Bridget finally took a shower, had some good food, and laid down in the comfort of her bed. How did this happen? I got injured from the shackles. Take this medicine, and this ointment should take care of the rash. Bridget suddenly realized how valuable her husband was. With his care, she started to get better. She couldn't help but be grateful for him. Sweetheart, I made you some chicken soup. Joe, did you have dinner? No. Let's have this together. The couple started living their lives again, a better life. But one night, while they were asleep, Bridget suddenly heard a strange clicking noise and woke up. She sat up startled to see a man had broken in and was standing just a distance away with a knife. Joe, wake up. What is it? When Joe got up, he froze. The man snickered at him. You look so innocent. You won't get away for what you did to my brother. That night, those men had been killed. Jackson had gone to a nearby alley to relieve himself. But as he was returning, he witnessed the man approach them and take their lives. That night, Jackson followed the man in secret to this house. But ever since Bridget had gone missing, the police had been keeping surveillance on the house, which made it difficult for him to break in. But now, he had Joseph at his mercy. Sir, you're mistaking. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. I don't know your brother. Shut up, you sick liar. I followed you that night to this house. No, I have seen the man's face. It's not Joe. I know it was him. Sir, believe me, I was in the hospital that whole night. I couldn't even move. My shoulder was dislocated. How can I do something like this? Today you'll see how it feels to get your face sliced off. Just as the man was to charge at Joseph, all of a sudden, there was a loud noise outside. In seconds, police barged in, holding down Jackson. The police had continued their surveillance undercover, finding it very suspicious to why this kidnapper would let her go without demanding anything in return. It was him. He's the killer. He took the life of my brother. I followed him to this house. No, officer. I have seen the man's face. It can't be Joe. Our undercops have noticed you around here a long time ago. Your game is over. That night, the police finally arrested the culprit, and after some questioning, let Joseph and Bridget be. What a night. So scary. He followed him to this house? After all the unfair treatment, hard work and struggle, Joseph has reached this point in his life and success by forbearance and suppressing his rage. But that night, when those men treated Bridget so horribly right in front of him, he couldn't take it anymore. He truly loved Bridget tremendously. And that night, when he was on painkillers asleep in the hospital, his rage subconsciously gave birth to a different personality within him, his dual personality, the Punisher. While everyone had fallen asleep, while Bridget had dozed off in the chair, Joseph left the room and picked up a coat to disguise himself. He then went to one of the morgue laboratories, where unidentified bodies or unclaimed bodies were kept. Joseph had been running a personal experiment of his, taking skin samples from these bodies and testing them. He experimented to see if it was possible to bond different skin, and through his efforts, made this mask. He wore the mask and went out in search of those men, and took their lives in cold blood before he returned home, where he hid the mask once more. And before anyone could realize, he returned to the hospital and took his place. Joseph's alter personality remained dormant, only unleashing itself by night. But the day Bridget insulted him and refused to accompany him to the hospital, the Punisher returned. He drugged her and brought her to an abandoned house, where he gave her a worthy punishment. However, when his alter personality realized his other personality was hurt and depressed without Bridget, he chose to let her go again. But now, Bridget has become suspicious. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. Meet Julia Derrickson, the youngest member of the Derrickson family of 4 other men. When her 3 brothers, George, Andrew, and Nathan, first heard she was on the way, they were expecting another brother, Graham, who would complete their GANG gang. But now, with Julia, they were stuck with Gange. It was actually her mother who had named her Julia before she was born. But unfortunately, Julia never got to meet her mother, as she passed away at the time of her birth. After her mother's demise, their father was lost. What to do with all these kids? He knew how to bring up boys, 3 in a row, but what to do with Julia? Not surprisingly, Julia grew up with her brothers, raised like a boy, so much so that she became one of the brothers. In fact, she went by JD. She did everything with her brothers and like her brothers. To wearing the same clothes, to getting the same haircuts, to playing with the same toys, accompanying them everywhere, and coming in handy when they needed to kick butt. Bro, you see that little punk over there? He's the one who tattled on us. Should we call the big boss? You guys want to call the big boss to take care of this little twerp? Don't worry, I got this one. Stop, please. You should have thought about that before you snitched, snitcher. 'Cause snitches get stitches. The Gange was a fierce pack. But when George, the eldest of them, aka the big boss, was to move out, the rest of the Ange were heartbroken. We're gonna miss you, bro. Call us, alright? Don't forget about us, okay? But as soon as George stepped out of the door, did the fight begin to claim territory. Now that the alpha lion is gone, who's gonna be king of the jungle? I'm the oldest, so I get it. But I'm the strongest, so I get it. My little brothers. Julia grew up believing she was the man. She wasn't even aware she was a woman until one gloomy dark day at the park. She was 7 years old. She had gone with her brothers to play when a few other boys called time out. I gotta pee, dude. Yeah, me too. They all walked out to the woods and set off their sprinklers. When Julia froze upon what she saw, I gotta go. Number 2? Yeah, I gotta go real bad. That's the first time she realized she was different from other boys. She simply thought she didn't have something other boys had. The only explanation could be she was a different kind of boy. But as she grew up, she realized she wasn't a boy at all. She was a girl. And deep down inside, she actually wanted to be a girl, but she was too embarrassed to admit it. Even at school, Julia put on her tough boy act, too insecure to show the least bit of girliness. Julia, you have to stand on the girls' line, not on the boys' line. Yeah, you wish. And my name is not Julia, it's JD. That was the first and only time anyone called her Julia. And let's just say the girl who dared never lived to tell the tale. From that day on, everyone knew her as JD. But as Julia started to age, she felt a bit outcast in her own home with 4 other men. She started Googling all things related to girls, and although she knew when she hit puberty at 11, she was a bit traumatized with it all. Now what's next? I'm gonna grow. Too embarrassed to tell her brothers or her father, Julia put on some sunglasses and a hoodie and headed to the store around the curb. Did your mom send you to buy this? No. Your sister? Yeah, my sister. Boogle turned out to be the mother she never had. The only person who seemed to sense something was up with her was her father. Julia, sweetheart, I know it's probably tough for you. If your mother were here, she would have taken better care of you, but I just can't do the same. What are you talking about, Dad? I'm okay. Entering into her teens, even though Julia tried very hard to be JD, deep down inside, she was Julia. Wow, you baked this? Now you're becoming a woman? Really, dude? You think that's why I would make a cake? Then why? Cake fight! My cake, my baby. It's a good thing I took a picture of you. High school was a big game changer for her. Being the way Julia was, wearing boyish clothing, keeping boyish hair, and in one word, being a tomboy, she got along with all the boys. And much of the girls were scared of her. Did you just roll your eyes at me? Yeah, she did. And that counts as twice because she's a 4 eyes. No, I was just looking. What's going on here? Nothing, JD. We were just chatting. Yeah, you better be. This was Michaela and her Mean Girls gang. They were annoying, and if they could, they'd pick on Julia too. Maybe she's one of those kind of girls. She likes girls. What did you say? You know what? You're right. You want to go out on a date this Friday? No thank you. Being JD, Julia couldn't help but mess with them. But in truth, she was actually crushing on a boy. James. But James would probably never see her like that. Hey dude. Hey man, what's up? Julia had tried to impress him, but it seemed she impressed him as JD, not Julia. Hey James, catch! Wow man, you're good! Julia often hung out with James and his buddies. They were all cool. The days went on and Julia kept her little secret to herself. It was one day, however, that she heard Robert was hosting a party at his place since his parents weren't going to be home. It was supposed to be wild, the party of the year. Everyone was going to sneak out and go. Robert was James's best friend, so James was definitely going to be there. Julia sat back listening to Michaela and her gang gossiping across the room when James walked up to them. You guys are coming to the party, right? Yeah, of course we're coming, James. It's gonna be awesome. Julia quietly sat there fiddling with her pen awkwardly when James called her out too and threw the football at her. JD, dude, you should come. Julia threw the ball back. Why? James threw it back at her. It won't be fun without you, dude. Alright, I'll try. When Julia got home, she plopped down on her bed thinking how she was gonna pull this off. What are you doing, Julia? Do you want to be James's dude or his girlfriend? He's never gonna fall in love with you by playing football. Julia thought of everything she could possibly do. When she hatched the perfect plan, JD isn't going to go to the party. Julia is going to go to the party. She sneaked into her dad's room and went through her mom's wardrobe, that he still kept the way it was for years now. There, she found the perfect dress and even some makeup. The dress was just a little loose on her, but she managed sewing it a bit smaller. But she still needed to do something about her hair. You have to buy a wig? Yeah, for my sister. At around 8 that night, Julia got ready, fluffed up some pillows under her blankets, turned off her lights, and sneaked out to Rob's place. Rob's house was packed with people from school, and though Julia was getting a lot of attention, no one recognized she was JD. Who is she, man? I don't know, I haven't seen her before. Wow, she's hot. Julia even noticed James had been looking at her. She's so beautiful. Julia was getting a drink when she bumped into James, or James intentionally bumped into her. Hey, what's up? Hi, I'm Julia. Oh, I'm James. Are you from a different school? No, the same school. You want to get some snacks? Sure. James and Julia hung out together, in which Julia felt out of this world. For the first time, she felt like she was being treated like a woman by a man. Love was in the air, but it didn't last long. When everyone started running out through the back door, some even out the windows. My parents are back! Everyone out! What? What now? Come with me. James ran out the back, laughing as he jumped over the fence from the backyard. He turned around, stretching out his hand. You need help? Julia laughed. Yeah, right. She grabbed her dress and jumped over the fence as James watched her in surprise. Nice jump. You're not like the other girls. Julia and James ran through the woods, behind Rob's house and around the curb until they finally stopped on the block back into the neighborhood. I should be getting home. My house is very far. It's pretty late. I can drop you off. That's alright. You wouldn't want my dad seeing you. He's very possessive. Oh, okay, but can we meet? Before James could build up the courage to ask this girl her number, he looked up and saw she was already down the block. Wow, she's athletic. When Julia crossed the street, however, she bumped right into the store dude. Darn. Hey, have I seen you before? Yeah, no, I'm JD's sister. Oh, that weird kid. When Julia got home, she slowly tried to creep in through the hallway window towards the back of the house. But just when she stepped in, she froze, hearing a voice down the hall. She stared at Andrew, looking back at her in shock. Mom, you're alive? What to do? What to do? Seeing Andrew's face go pale, Julia took her chances. Yeah, go to sleep. What are you doing up at this time? But Mom... What did I say? Go to bed, young man. Andrew ran back to his room and rolled up in his blankets, shivering. What did he just see? Bro, what are you doing in the bed? I saw Mom. She was here. She said to go to sleep. You saw Mom? Are you crazy? What did I tell you? Mom said we have to sleep. Get in the bed. Julia jumped into her bed and let out a breath of relief. Phew. She lay there pretending to be asleep, but all she could really think of was James. The next day, she wore her usual, walked down for breakfast, and hurried out for school. When JD got to class, however, a smile appeared on her face when she overheard everyone murmuring about a mystery girl. Even James. Man, who was that girl last night? What was her name? Julia. She was beautiful. She sat down when Rob nudged her. Dude, you should have been there. We saw the most beautiful girl. James is in love with this mystery girl now. Really? Julia watched as James desperately watched the hallways from his seat every time someone walked by. In the cafeteria, he kept scanning the room, perhaps trying to spot that girl. Should she tell him? No, what would he think? She was a freak. But the days were going by and it seemed James couldn't get over her. He even spoke to Julia about it once. JD, I just can't forget her. Where am I going to find her again? Dude, you gotta get over her. Over the months, Julia and James became good friends, but she never exposed her secret to him. But it was the week of the school dance that James came up to her with a strange smirk on his face. JD, you want to be my date for the dance? Are you crazy, dude? Have you lost your mind? You didn't find that mystery girl, did you? So that's a no from JD. Yeah, I don't go to dances. Then perhaps you can ask Julia what she has to say? Julia froze, suddenly realizing James knew. How did you know? Your eyes. Alright, I'll ask her. Maybe she might just say yes. The night of the party, no one but James had recognized Julia for Julia instantly, but he hadn't said anything seeing Julia didn't want to reveal her identity. She's so beautiful. On the evening of the school dance, Julia came as Julia again, arm in arm with James, as everyone looked at them in awe. James, dude, be careful. Who is this mystery girl? Where does she come from and where does she vanish? You can find her. She's from our school. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It was 8:15 when Leslie woke up. She looked out the frost-covered windows to see the streets, houses, and cars, all covered in snow. Leslie shivered, feeling the cool breeze seeping in through the glass. Despite wanting to stay comfy and cozy at home, the heaters in the house weren't working. So she put on a jacket and a pair of socks to bear through the cold. Walking out into the kitchen, Leslie saw her mom wasn't there. There was no breakfast on the table or coffee brewing in the machine. She turned to go to her parents' room, but her mom wasn't there either. Hearing noises from the backyard, Leslie rushed to check. Creaking open the door to see her dad shoveling. Where's Mom? In a low voice, he said. Your uncle came around 10 last night. She went to your grandma's with him. When is she coming back? I don't know. Watching her dad angrily shovel the snow, Leslie anxiously stepped back inside and went straight to his room. She looked through her mom's wardrobe and closet. Everything was still there. In fact, Mom's phone was still on the desk. Leslie hoped this wouldn't be true, but she knew her mom didn't go to her grandma's because she saw her last at 2 a.m. the previous night. Ever since the start of this pandemic, her parents had constantly been arguing. To say, their relationship had gotten quite strained. But it was especially after her dad lost his job during the lockdown that the fights increased. In the dead of winter, when it was piercing cold out, her dad was struggling to pay the electricity bills and the gas bill, not to mention the rent. "Scott, how are we going to stay like this? The electricity is going to be cut off. You have to pay the bill." "Pay the bill? From where? Where am I going to get the money?" Without much choice, they had to move to this small house far from town in a rather questionable area, which her mom didn't like at all. "Now we have to move there? What do you want me to do? You know our situation." The house was old and run down. The walls were peeling away, the floorboards creaked, the ceiling leaked, the plumbing and heat had issues, of many other things. And after moving in, the arguments only continued until last night Leslie overheard and saw her parents having the worst fight yet. "Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life." "Yeah, and you did me such a favor. I didn't force you to marry me." "You didn't force me, you fooled me into it. You said we would have a happy life." "Everything isn't in my power." "Because you're good for nothing." "Carla, shut that mouth right now or you'll regret it. What are you going to do? Hit me? You're going to hit me?" It all started around 9 last night. Leslie lay in bed listening to her parents argue, anxious when she started to hear loud noises from their room. But then, everything suddenly fell silent. She closed her eyes trying to calm down and soon went to sleep. But it was sometime around 2 a.m. that she woke up hearing her floorboards creak. She shifted in bed, seeing her mom standing by her door, slowly walk in and sit down beside her. In the darkness, Leslie snuggled in her blankets as she felt her mom's cool hands stroke her hair. The last thing she whispered to her, "I'll always be by your side." Leslie sat up confused and worried. "Mom?" But there was no one in the room. She was all alone. Leslie feared the worst, and now she knew perhaps her mom was no longer with them. Perhaps it was her spirit who had come to visit her. That morning, Leslie skipped her breakfast and spent much of the day in her room, pondering about what happened the night before. Late in the afternoon, she stepped out into the quiet, gloomy house, passing by the living room to see her father drinking. Lately, he had been drinking a lot, and sometimes it felt he wasn't even in his senses. With her mom now gone, the house felt so empty and so messed up. Leslie hadn't eaten properly in the last 2 days. She kept to herself in her room. Her dad left in the morning and returned late at night. They rarely spoke. Not that Leslie had any wish to speak with him after what he did. She went to the kitchen and made herself a sandwich with the last of the leftovers, barely gulping it down and returning to her room. Listening to the heavy gusts of wind blowing outside, Leslie soon went to sleep. It was around 1 a.m. when she woke up. She sat up a bit startled to see someone sitting by the edge of her bed. "Mom, you came? I miss you. Without you, my life has become a mess." Hearing her mother's soft voice, Leslie became teary. "Things are going to be different now. You have to be strong, Leslie." Before Leslie could ask her mother anything more, suddenly her door opened and her dad looked at her. "Who are you talking with?" he said, turning on the light. Leslie peered a glance around the room. Her mom left. "It's no one." Leslie scowled before she laid back down, waiting for her dad to leave. And as soon as he did, she got back up. "Mom, can you hear me? Mom, please, speak to me." But the room was silent. That was the last time Leslie had spoken to her. But she knew and she felt her mom was still around her. She was watching over her. Sometimes Leslie felt like she was standing right beside her. And sometimes she could hear her humming like she used to. And now and then, Leslie even caught a glimpse of her. But despite the solace she received from her mom, she couldn't help but feel hatred towards her dad for the despicable thing he had done. She didn't want to stay with him, but now in this lockdown, Leslie couldn't even go to school to get away. After a long day, all alone in the house, her dad showed up sometime around 10 p.m. Leslie ignored him and got up to go to her room. When her dad called her, "Did you have dinner? Did you bring any groceries? Don't behave like your mother. Or else what? You're going to hit me like you used to hit Mom?" Leslie shouted before she stormed off to her room. Scott looked at his daughter shocked. He wasn't going to tolerate this behavior. But just as he was to follow her to her room, he felt an odd, cool breeze around him. And all of a sudden, one of the photo frames on the shelves fell to the floor and shattered. Scott turned to check the windows. They were all closed. How did it fall? And now on the floor lay a family picture of them. Leslie knew it wasn't just a coincidence. It was her mom's presence. The following day, Leslie noticed her dad cleaning up the house, being nice to her, trying to speak to her, but it was nothing more than an act to cover up his secret. And that night, surprisingly, her dad returned home earlier than usual. "Leslie, come, let's have dinner together. I got you BI burgers and fries, and I brought eggs and bread for breakfast tomorrow." "I'm not hungry." "Have you eaten anything all day? Why are you behaving like this?" Leslie shrugged as she stared at her dad. "I can behave however I want, just leave me alone, go eat by yourself." Scott looked at his daughter shocked. "You ungrateful. I'm exhausting myself day and night. I'm doing everything I can, but you and your mother, you guys will never be satisfied with anything." "I said, just leave me alone." As soon as the words slipped Leslie's mouth, her dad became furious and was about to hit her. Leslie closed her eyes when suddenly, the windows in her room burst open in the wind. And at once the electricity began to malfunction. Scott froze, staring at the light bulb flicker ominously as the window banged against the wall in the winds. What is going on? But it was as soon as Scott dropped his hand and rushed to close the window, everything suddenly calmed down again. Leslie stood there firmly looking at her dad in disgust. "Don't you know what is going on? We have to move out of this house. Something's not right." "Why? Why do we have to move out? Because you're afraid of her? Because she's trying to protect me?" "Afraid of who? Who's trying to protect you? What are you talking about?" "Don't act innocent, Dad, like you don't know anything. You're responsible for this. It's you." Leslie stared at her father fall silent before he left the room without another word. What more could he say? He knew it was his fault. That night, her father didn't come out of his room, and Leslie too decided to go to bed. She turned off all the lights in her room and sat down, waiting and hoping she could speak to her mother. "Mom, even after your death, you're still protecting me," she said in the silent room. Looking around, Leslie suddenly noticed her mom standing to the corner of the room. "Leslie, don't let your father do what he did to me. The authorities aren't going to believe you. Your father will take your life, and no one will know. Don't wait until it's too late. Tears fell down Leslie's face as her mom vanished again. She lay in bed thinking about everything. These past days had been so painful. Was she not going to avenge her mother's death? Was she waiting for when her father would do the same to her? Her mother was right. She had to get rid of him. So the next day, after her father left, Leslie went into her dad's room and carefully took out his gun from his safe. She anxiously waited for him to return, watching him as he sat in the living room, drinking, waiting for him to go to bed. And around midnight, she loaded the gun and slowly left her room and walked down the hall to his. Without a noise, she opened his door, just enough to see him. Her father was sleeping sound. Leslie's hands trembled as she held the gun at him, closing her eyes as she put her finger on the trigger. "This is for you, Mom." But as the tears rolled down her cheeks, and with all her strength as she was about to press the trigger, she froze, hearing the doorbell. Leslie put down the gun and stepped aside as her father got up and turned on the lamp. Scott came out in a hurry, confused as to who it was at this time. "Leslie, what are you doing here?" Gripping onto the gun behind her, Leslie said, "Someone rang the bell. Go to your room." From the hallway, Leslie watched her father as he looked through the peephole and suddenly hurried to unlock the door. A heavy gust of wind blew in as the snow poured heavily outside. And there on the porch stood none other than Clara. Wiping away her tears, Clara looked at her husband. It had been almost a week she had been away from him. That night, when she and Scott had a fight and things were going out of control, she had called her brother and left the house without anything. But she soon realized her mistake. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I was being so stubborn. I was unwilling to understand. I knew our situation, but because of the difficulty, I blamed everything on you, when it wasn't your fault." Scott sighed as he ushered his wife in. "Forget everything. Come on, it's snowing so heavily out tonight." Seeing her mom and dad get back together, Leslie stood there in shock as her hands trembled, feeling the cold gun against her skin. If her mom was alive, then who had she been seeing? Who was the woman trying to kill her family? Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It has been over a month since Raul has been working at this small subway store at a train station in New York City. He works the night shift from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And the store's owner, Frank Costello, covers the day shift from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And together, they run the store 24/7. The store was located on the upper platform of the subway. And while summers were hot and humid, in the winter, it got extremely cold. The weather was sometimes unbearable. When it rained, everything got wet. And when it snowed, it was freezing. Nonetheless, Raul managed the store through it all, never even taking a day off. But even then, Frank gave him very little pay. And why wouldn't he? Frank had a certain advantage over Raul's situation, as Raul didn't have any legal documents. He traveled here a few months ago, so that he could take care of his brothers and sisters back home. Though Raul despised working here, he was fortunate to have gotten the job in the first place, and he had to make things work out. People say this subway station is haunted, but according to Raul, if this subway was haunted in any way, it would be by its loneliness. After midnight, all the express trains turned to local trains, and only about one train arrived every hour or so. And at times, this station truly felt like a ghost station. The only person present would be Raul throughout much of the long nights. However, there was one thing Raul waited for every night. Around 11 p.m., a young woman came to this subway. Raul would watch her from the store. She would sit on the benches up ahead and quietly wait for her train. And tonight, like all other nights, Raul was watching the time tick by on his watch, waiting for her again. Sure enough, a few minutes past 11, he spotted her. Today the weather had been really cold. The temperature was in the negatives, and the winds were howling near 20 miles per hour. Usually, the trains came on time before midnight, but today they were coming almost 2 hours late. Raul stood at the store, watching the young woman, wondering, should I just go talk to her? No, she won't talk to a stranger. Then again, she might. This is New York. We're all strangers. Why am I overthinking? What's the worst thing that can happen? She'll say no? So Raul decided to make 2 cups of coffee and went and sat next to her. Hi, I'm Raul. I work at that store. The young woman looked at him. Yes, I know, she quietly said before she looked out for the train again. It's really cold tonight. I thought you might need a hot coffee. Passing another glance at him, the young woman shook her head. No, thank you. I'm all right. You don't feel cold? No, I'm fine. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Raul fell silent for a while. Is she thinking I'm one of those type of guys, trying to hit on her? Raul quickly nodded and pointed at the ceiling. You know these subway cameras record everything. So if anybody tries anything wrong, they won't be able to get away with it. That's when the young woman suddenly chuckled. Most of these cameras never work. A heavy gust of wind passed down the platform. Raul was frigid in the cold. But the young woman simply sat there, not too bothered. Raul placed her coffee on the bench and sighed. I'm really not used to this weather. Where I'm from, it's very warm. You must have grown up here. No, I got used to it. So, you're not from here? No, I moved from Georgia. Oh, okay. You don't know where Georgia is, do you? Not really. It's only been a few months since I moved to America. The young woman smiled at him. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm Raul. Everyone comes to the Big Apple seeking the American dream. True. You and me, we aren't very different. I also came to the Big Apple for the same reason. Do you like working here? I see you every night. Well, I really don't have any other choice. But what about you? I see you here every night as well. You know something? This isn't really my station. I come here every night by mistake. Raoul looked at her confused. By mistake? Michelle looked out, catching a glimpse of the train ahead. Oh, that's my train. She got up and took her bag to step forward. Raoul watched her nearing the edge, wondering if he would see her again tomorrow, whether they would talk again. But just as the train came speeding down, all of a sudden, Michelle ran off the platform. Near dawn at 5 a.m., Frank arrived at the station. As he walked down the snow-covered platform, he suddenly noticed someone laying on the ground. Reaching closer, he realized it was Raoul. Raoul! Wake up, Raoul! Hearing his voice, Raoul regained his consciousness and opened his eyes. Frank was back. It was morning. The station was empty. Everything was covered over by a fresh coat of snow. Are you okay? Were you unconscious here the whole night in the snow? How are you still alive? Getting on his feet again, Raoul brushed himself off. I'm fine. How did this happen? Raoul looked up at the cameras. These cameras never work, do they? Up ahead, Raoul spotted the next train speeding down the tracks. He looked at Frank. What? In the blink of his eyes, Frank yelled out in shock as Raoul pushed him over onto the tracks. Almost a year ago, at the time Michelle was 19 years old, she was living with her family in Georgia. But she had big dreams of living in the city, in New York City, and her family was completely against it. It was only after a lot of arguments that Michelle left to be on her own. After arriving to the Big Apple, Michelle moved in with a friend and soon got a job as a salesperson at Binham. Every day she would have to work long hours, exhausting herself, until she was off at 10 p.m. On her usual nights, she would take a train back home. It was around the New Year's. There was a severe snowstorm passing over the city, and on one of those frigid cold nights, Michelle headed to the station and took her usual train. However, what she didn't realize was that, due to the bad weather, the train had taken a different route and dropped her at the wrong station. When she finally came to realize, Michelle got a bit panicked. It was past midnight, and she couldn't gather up the courage to head down in an absolutely unknown area at that time of the night to catch a cab. Instead, she thought if she waited a while longer, she could catch another train. So Michelle sat down, but the winds were piercing cold, and Michelle was freezing sitting there. Seeing the small store on the platform, Michelle got herself a cup of coffee and tried to wait it out. However, as the night passed, the snow became heavier and the weather absolutely unbearable. That's when Michelle went to the store again. I'm really not used to this cold. Could you help me out? At the time, Frank had been running the store on his own. And seeing the beautiful woman, he called her in. All right, come in. Finally standing behind the counter, Michelle got a bit of relief. But she soon started to get uncomfortable by how close Frank stood by her. She tried backing away, but Frank chuckled seeing her so stressed. "It's all right. Don't be shy." "Excuse me, don't come near me." That night, Frank had his way with Michelle. In the empty station, in the middle of the snowstorm, no one was there to help her, or even hear her cries. Devastated by what happened, Michelle clutched onto her jacket, crying as she walked down the platform again. But seeing her leave, Frank ran towards her. "Listen, don't do anything rash. Don't tell anyone." Startled and afraid, Michelle shouted, "Don't touch me." But at that moment, Frank realized if he let her leave, he would get him into big trouble. And just as the train arrived that night, Frank did what he had to and pushed her onto the tracks, taking her life. The next morning, when people discovered her body, they called it an accident. And when police arrived, they tried getting footage from the cameras, but found out the cameras were old and damaged, and simply came to the same conclusion: she must have slipped and fell in the bad weather. On the other hand, Frank had gotten away with what he did, or so he did for the time being. That morning, police arrived to the scene to take away the remains of Frank Costello. One of the officers came to speak with Raoul, the only person present at the time. What happened here? The platform had been icy and slippery because of the snow. Perhaps Mr. Costello lost his balance and fell over. Accidents aren't something new in this station. This happened with another young woman here many months ago. Ruling Frank's death as yet another accident, Raoul had gotten away just like he did. And in the following days, Frank's wife came to meet Raoul and handed the responsibility of the store to him. Raoul now works here. Every night, he sits and waits. But the station is empty and utterly silent. Raoul never saw Michelle again. But it was late one night, when he was closing the store. He saw something strange in the snow. Thank you. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It was an hour to midnight on New Year's Eve. Bella slowly climbed out her window and crept down the front yard, meeting up with her friend Candace. A little late? Yeah, I was getting a little nervous sneaking out of the house. Let's go, they're waiting for us. I heard they got really awesome fireworks. Year 2000 is gonna be great. Bella and Candace were headed to Sawdust Point by the lakeside, where they were supposed to meet up with a few of their guy friends to celebrate the 2000 New Year. The weather was cold and windy, and after a long ride across town, the friends finally reached there, but they couldn't spot anyone else. Where are they? Why aren't they here yet? We're at the right location, right? Yeah, Felix said he would be here. The weather was significantly colder and windier by the shore. The lake was partially frozen. Candace and Bella stood waiting, hoping their friends would show up soon. They thought they were alone. But they were unaware. Some people had gotten their eyes on them. Hey, beautiful. What are you doing here so late? Need some company? Look, you're shaking. I can keep you warm tonight. Bella sternly looked at them. Listen, don't think we're alone. The guys will be here anytime. Oh, really? And what are they going to do? Bella was rude and harsh, but seeing a few of them, Candace was scared. Bella, let's go. We don't want trouble. What? You want to run from these bums? Who are you calling bum? As the guys started to surround them, Candace yelled, "Run!" She ran straight to the scooter, but when she turned for Bella, she was panicked to see the guys had surrounded her. Bella just barely managed to escape and ran the other way as they chased her. As Bella neared the rocky edge of the bank, she stopped, staring at the guys. What was she going to do? You aren't going anywhere. The next morning, when Bella's mother, Lauren, passed by her room, she stopped noticing it was empty. Bella? Where did she go so early in the morning? It was the holidays. Bella didn't have school, and she wouldn't be going out so early anywhere else either. Lauren went around the house. She called up her friends, but they didn't know where Bella was. Albert, do you know where Bella is? What do you mean, she's not home? She's not in her room. I called her friends, she's not with them either. Then where is she? After calling a few other friends and relatives to no news of Bella, Albert walked around the neighborhood, but he couldn't find her anywhere. And when hours went by like this, the parents were awfully worried. Bella had never done anything like this before. Panicked, the parents headed to the police. Officer, the last time I saw my daughter was last night. She went to bed and this morning she wasn't in her room. A lot of people had gone out to celebrate and light fireworks for the 2000 New Year. Are you sure she didn't sneak out last night? Lauren and Albert looked at each other, unsure. Would their daughter sneak out? Does she have any close friends or a boyfriend? She doesn't have a boyfriend, but Candace is her best friend. We spoke to her, but she doesn't know anything. Noting down all the information of Bella's disappearance, the police then went to Candace's house to have a word with her. When was the last time you met or spoke to Bella? A day ago. We spoke on the phone. Did you have any plans on the New Year's? A few friends of ours had gotten some fireworks and we all wanted to go to Sawdust Point to celebrate, but I couldn't build up the courage to leave the house. After speaking to Candace, the police then started to investigate what actually happened. Tom, Brad, and Joe, 3 teens, They were arrested last night when officers found illegal fireworks on them. They went to the same school, headed to the same area. But they never made it. It's possible Bella Anderson went to Sawdust Point alone. We have to search the area. The police immediately sent out search teams around Sawdust Point. And sure enough, they discovered a clue. She must have been here. But even after hours of searching, they were unable to find her body. Lauren tirelessly called every person she knew asking about her daughter. Albert drove around town hoping to spot a glimpse of her. But days were going by, and there was no news of Bella, and the parents were becoming desperate. In all this, it was one day, while Lauren was speaking to her neighbor, Sharon, she gave her some advice. You won't find her going from door to door like this, Lauren. What am I supposed to do? How else will I find her? I know someone. Her name is Shoshana. She can help. Desperate as she was, Lauren agreed to visit this woman, who was known to have helped people in difficult situations before. That evening, convincing Albert, the couple went with Sharon to meet Shoshana. Upon knocking on her door, a woman dressed in black stepped out, strangely looking at them. Sharon, how are you? I'm well, Shoshana. This is Lauren and Albert. Hello. Hello. They're very good people, but their daughter is missing. Please help them. She is a very innocent child. Listening to Sharon, Shoshana looked at Lauren and Albert for a while, before she gave way. Come in. The parents followed her into a dark room. Inside was nothing but a round table, and on it a small bowl of oil. They sat down as Shoshana lit a few candles and placed them around the table. Do you have something that belongs to her? Lauren took out a napkin. Inside were a few strands of hair she had brought from Bella's comb. This is her hair. Shoshana picked up the strands and dropped it into the oil. She then picked up a needle and stirred the oil before she put out her palm. 2 drops of blood mingled together. Lauren and Albert passed each other a glance before they both gave their hands. Shoshana pricked them and mixed 2 drops of their blood into the bowl, and lastly, a drop of her own. Lauren and Albert watched as she began chanting something. And all of a sudden, all the candles went out, and in an instant, the bowl caught on fire. Your daughter will be back. That night, Lauren and Albert returned home. They were stressed, they were anxious, they couldn't understand what they experienced at Shoshana's. Do you think it worked? Do you think we'll find Bella? I don't know, Lauren. It was sometime late into the night. The parents heard a knock on their door. But as they opened the door, they froze, seeing Bella. Her hair disheveled, her clothes ruined, her face pale. Bella, my dear, where were you? What happened to you? But Bella was silent. The parents took her in and sat her down. Bella didn't say a word. She didn't even look at them. Listen, don't ask her anything. Our daughter is back. What more do you want? Are you suspecting something bad happened with her? Whatever happened, happened. It wasn't her fault. She's traumatized. Don't ask her anything now. If we treat her like this, she won't be able to recover. After she's better, we'll ask her what happened. All right. Lauren and Albert didn't tell anyone about what happened with Bella, nor did they ask her anything. That night, Bella took a shower and returned to the table where the family sat down to eat. How are you feeling, dear? But Bella was quiet. She simply stared at her bowl. I made your favorite soup. Aren't you hungry? I'm not hungry, she said before she got up and went back to her room. School had opened up again, but for the next few days Bella didn't go, and her parents didn't force her either, trying to be easy on her. But Bella wasn't the same anymore. She was nothing like what she used to be. Entire days would go by, and she would just sit in her room. She didn't watch movies or listen to music, or read books like she used to. She would rarely say a word and rarely even ate a morsel of food, and this was how the days were going by. One evening, while Bella was in the shower, Lauren had gone to clean up her room. There was a horrible stench inside. What is that? Following the stench, Lauren walked to her closet and opened it up. She stumbled back upon what she found. How did this? There on the ground were the remains of a cat, squirrels, birds, portions of their bodies torn off as if someone had bit them. Lauren immediately told her husband about everything. Albert, do you think she was eating it? What? What nonsense. Then how did it get in her closet? Whatever it is, just clean it out. Albert didn't pay the matter much heed, but Lauren couldn't forget what she saw. She decided to call up Candace. Perhaps Bella would open up if she had some company. Yes, Mrs. Anderson? Would you please come over to the house? Why, Mrs. Anderson? Is everything okay? Bella, she's back. What? Bella is back? Yes, but she hasn't been well. She's traumatized. I was hoping if you talked to her, she might feel better. So that evening, Candace made her way to the Andersons, where Lauren took her to see Bella. You girls talk. I'll be downstairs. When Mrs. Anderson had left, Candace looked at Bella. She didn't know where to start. Bella, thank you so much for not telling anyone anything. I really thought they killed you that night, and I was going to be next. If I knew you were alive, I would have never left without you. When Bella didn't say anything, Candace sat beside her. Bella, listen. Whatever happened has happened. You need to move on. We don't need to tell anyone about it. And no one will ever know. Hearing Candace shout, Lauren and Albert rushed upstairs. There on the ground, Bella was crouched over, blood on her hands, on her mouth. Candace was no more. What have you done? You don't know what she did. What are we going to do, Albert? We have to get rid of the body. If anyone finds out, Bella will be in trouble. We can't tell anyone she's back." That night, Albert took Candace's body and dropped it out into the lake across town. The very next day, Candace was reported missing, and the police had gotten involved. But Lauren and Albert kept quiet about Bella. The parents didn't allow anyone in the house. However, when days went by, they became concerned as to how long they would pull this off, how long they could hide Bella. And it was one night they got a visit from the police. "It's the police. Stay calm. We have to handle this." Albert opened the door. There, outside, stood an officer. "Bella." "Mom? Dad? Mr. Anderson. We found her at a hospital across town." "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Mom. That night, Candace and I went out to the lakeside. Our friends had gotten fireworks and we wanted to celebrate the New Year's, but when we got there, some goons started harassing us. They chased me and I suddenly fell and hit my head. When I woke up, I realized they dropped me off at a hospital. The staff couldn't identify them or me, and I was severely injured on my head. I wasn't in the condition to tell them anything." Albert and Lauren didn't know what to say but to thank the officer. "Thank you so much." "No problem. Take care." They brought inside their daughter, and Bella let out a breath of relief. "I really need to wash up. I'm gonna go to my room." "No, you can't go upstairs," Albert quickly said. Confused, Bella asked, "Why?" "Albert, if Bella is here, who is upstairs?"
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
On a cold, snowy, windy night, Jonathan was driving back home to his state after visiting his girlfriend Kate. As he sped down the road, numerous memories and thoughts ran through his mind as he remembered the old days of their relationship. He and Kate had been dating for 3 years. They were very close, in love, and planning a future together. For the last 1 year, Jonathan and Kate had been in a living relationship. And Jonathan had been supporting her as Kate tried for her dream job in the fashion industry. "The interview is today, John. I'm feeling so nervous." "Don't worry, everything will be fine." And finally, Kate recently got her big break at the IIB fashion company. "Jonathan, I still can't believe it. I got the job." "You've been trying for this break for so long. We have to celebrate." Exhausted, Jonathan was having difficulty keeping his eyes open as he stared at the dark road ahead of him, only being able to see as much as his car headlights allowed. He hadn't slept in the last 48 hours and had been driving for a long time. It was past 1 a.m. when Jonathan suddenly flinched to his wheels skid on the snowy, slippery road. He had dozed off. But in the middle of nowhere, Jonathan didn't have much choice. Letting out a deep breath, he stared into the snow. It wasn't safe to go on like this. In this weather, he would end up having an accident. But in the middle of nowhere, Jonathan didn't have much choice. He remembered seeing a small motel on his way here. Perhaps if he could drive a bit longer, he could stay there for the night. So Jonathan began driving slowly again. When he suddenly noticed a woman in the distance. What was she doing out here in the middle of this highway? Perhaps her car broke down. As Jonathan neared her, he saw the woman turn around. She was very beautiful. She smiled, looking directly into his eyes. But Jonathan turned his gaze onto the road and drove on without stopping to inquire or help her. Women, you can't trust any one of them. There's nothing but deceit behind that smile. Jonathan was happy for Kate, and he always tried to support her in every way possible. But after getting the job, Kate became overwhelmed with her work. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I know it was our date night, but I had so much work." "It's alright. You're still new to the job. It'll take some time to adjust." But the days turned to weeks and Kate was often late coming home. And she was always so tired. In fact, she didn't even have time on the weekends like before. Rather, she had different plans with her boss or her colleagues. "Ever since you joined this job, it's like you have no time for me." "Try to understand, John. I'm in fashion. It's a creative industry. Ideas can come anytime, even on the weekends. And when ideas come, you have to work on it." But now and then, Kate tried to make up for it. "Finally, you're home. Surprise. Come on, dinner's getting cold. I made your favorite." The days were going by one way or the other, and Jonathan and Kate were trying to make it work. But in all this, Kate had to leave on a business trip out of state for 3 whole weeks. And wanting to surprise her, a week into being away, Jonathan drove a whole 9 hours in the stormy, snowy weather just to meet her. I'm here to visit Kate Winslow. I'm Jonathan Reeves. She's in room 206. Brushing back his hair and fixing up the flowers, Jonathan smiled as he knocked on her door. And as expected, when Kate opened up, she froze in shock seeing him. "John?" Jonathan walked in with the flowers. "Surprise? You thought only you would surprise me?" But that's when Jonathan fell silent seeing her boss in her bed. "John, let me explain. So this is what you've been busy with?" Shattered and upset, Jonathan dropped the flowers and left without another word. Now, every time Jonathan thought of all those good moments he spent with Kate, he felt so betrayed. He had always supported her and trusted her, and she misuse his trust. How could she live with him maintaining that false act all the time? Deceit behind what he once thought a beautiful smile. And after what Jonathan experienced, he would never be able to trust another woman again. A while into driving, Jonathan noticed another person walking down the highway road. A bit surprised, he stared closely to recognize it was the same woman. Jonathan was a bit unnerved when she turned to smile at him again. How could she make it here so quickly, and in the snow? She wasn't even wearing a jacket. Was it really her, or was he seeing things in his drowsiness? Not understanding what just happened, Jonathan continued driving, but he was now a bit frightened. "20 minutes down the secluded roads, Jonathan reached the Sunset Inn. It seemed practically empty. There was not a single car on the parking lot besides Jonathan's, but he could see the light in the office room on the first floor. So Jonathan locked up, shivering as he headed inside. As he walked in covered in snow, the manager looked at him surprised. "Did you just drive in from Route 95? "Yes." "No one travels down that route, especially at night. It's a bad road." "Why?" "People have seen strange things." Jonathan was a bit surprised thinking of the woman, but extremely exhausted, he didn't have the patience to talk. "Are there any rooms available?" "Yes, $50 per night," the manager said, taking down a key. As Jonathan wrote his name into the register and made the payment, he asked, "Are there any arrangements for food?" "Sorry, the diner is closed and there aren't any stores around here. You'll have to drive about 1 hour away to the nearest market." "All right, thank you." Letting out a sigh, Jonathan took the keys to his room on the second floor and went upstairs. As he walked down the balcony, 2 rooms down from his, he noticed a woman walking with her baby. It was so late at night, and she was out here in the cold. The woman turned and waved at him politely, so Jonathan too nodded his head before he went inside. Dropping his jacket onto the table, he freshened up, took a seat near the window, looking out into the snow. The weather was cold, but it was beautiful outside. He closed his eyes, trying to clear out his thoughts, and soon dozed off. But sometime later, Jonathan woke up hearing the scream of a woman and the cry of a baby outside. He jumped up, startled to see the same woman he had seen walking on the highway, standing right outside the window, her hands up onto the glass as she stared into his eyes. Jonathan got up, horrified, seeing her smile, her lips stretch across her face as if they had been cut out. Suddenly, the woman's fingers started to grow long and sharp as she clenched onto the glass. Jonathan stepped back, holding his ears to that shrill, piercing sound of the woman scratching her nails along the window. As the glass began to crack, he fell back onto the bed. As the window shattered and the woman climbed in, approaching him. What was happening? Was this a dream? What was she? Hearing the scream, the sound of the baby crying, followed by the shattering noise from upstairs, the manager rushed out to see the matter. He ran upstairs and immediately barged into the room. But as soon as he did, he was frightened to see the vicious woman standing tall, turn to gaze at him. She instantly charged at the manager and sliced his throat with her bare hands. In a panic, Jonathan ran out the door, stopping to see the baby sitting in front of the lifeless body of his mother, crying profusely. Jonathan was about to pass by his room to take the child, but before he could, the vicious woman stepped out in front of him. Jonathan didn't have a choice but to jump over the balcony from the second floor, breaking his fall onto the snow-covered concrete below. He injured and bruised himself, but he didn't stop and ran to his car. But just as he was getting in, he turned to look at the woman standing on the balcony, staring at him as she held the crying baby in her arms, stroking around his throat with her pointed, long fingers. Frightened to his core, Jonathan didn't know what was that thing, but he knew he needed to bring back help. He pressed on the gas, driving as fast as he could down the slippery roads, until he stopped, seeing a police car outside a gas station. Jonathan rushed out to approach them. "Officers, I was staying at the Sunset Inn. There's a crazy woman there. I don't know if she's a woman at all. She took the life of the manager and another woman who was there, and she took her child. I tried to rescue the baby, but I couldn't. You have to come with me." "Sunset Inn? That can't be possible." "No, you have to believe me, please." Seeing Jonathan's condition, the officers passed each other a glance before they followed Jonathan back to the Sunset Inn. However, this time, as the cars parked in front of the inn, Jonathan stepped out, confused to see everything silent. The lights all turned off, the inn locked up. There was no sign of anyone ever being here. "This is what we were thinking. This inn has been closed for years now. But they were here. Maybe you had a rough night." "No, I saw them with my own eyes. I don't understand. How could this be?" Years ago, a man named Bill Atkins had sold his wife's family-inherited house and bought this inn. He opened up a small diner along with it and hired a bartender to work for him and offered her a room to live as well. But it was over time that he and the young woman got into a relationship and eventually had a child. Though they kept it a secret, it was one day the man's wife discovered his secret affair. And on a dark, cold, snowy night, she had come to the inn and broke into the woman's room, taking her life and the life of their child. And lastly, her husband, before she fled into the forest and went missing. No one could find her at the time. But to this day, people have claimed bizarre things, seeing her spirit walking along the highway route, and sometimes witnessing the cruel night in this very inn. Standing outside the Sunset Inn in the stillness of the night as the snow poured heavily, Jonathan stared at the balcony where he had last seen the woman. What did I see?
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
You thought you could take my boat and run away from me? No. Please, let me go. Don't do this to me. You forgot the keys. Nolan, it's on the news. Police are investigating the missing people. 3 women so far. What are we going to do? What if people find out about us? We've been lodging here for some time now. We should move before people start getting suspicious. But how will we go in this weather? The snowstorm will hit this area soon. We don't have a choice. At least we have the boat. But before anything, we need to clear out the cabin. We can't leave behind anything that they can trace us by. For the past few months, Nolan and Ivania had been sailing down the Willamette River from California into Oregon, on the run from the police. Reaching near Willamette Falls, they rented a cabin and were living under a false identity. But recently, with news of people going missing in the area, the couple had become a reason of suspicion, and it wasn't safe to lodge here any longer. It was the dead of winter, and traveling would be extremely hazardous, but they had to go. Erasing all evidence of them ever being there, Nolan and Ivania locked up the cabin, returned their keys, and headed to the docks to set off the next morning. It had been snowing on and off for the past few days, and the weather didn't seem like it would clear up soon. Nolan and Ivania had just a small speedboat with which they had to complete the entire journey. We'll have to set up the convertible top. I'll help you. As the couple were setting up the convertible top on their boat, they suddenly heard someone running down the dock calling them. "Hold on! Hold on!" They turned to see a man rushing towards them, carrying a briefcase in his hands. "Hello, I'm Heath Burton. I'm a doctor from Algoma. I've been trying to get a boat from the rental here, but they're not giving their boats to anyone in this weather, and I was really hoping if I could rent from someone. I'm sorry, but we have an emergency. We'll be setting off right now." "Then would you please give me a lift? No matter which direction you're going, you'll have to pass through the North Channel. I was staying on an island there for a research project. I had to return to the city to get some appliances, but due to this bad weather, I didn't expect to get stuck here. And if I don't get back, it will sabotage all my research work." He looked like a decent person. Nolan stared at the man. Should he help him? How long will it take to reach there? About 4 hours. Listening to the man, Ivania ushered Nolan. "Nolan, may I have a word with you?" "Nolan, we can't let anyone know where we're going. What if he finds out about us? And what if we don't reach his place in time?" "Don't worry, he won't find out. It'll take over a day to reach our destination, and we'll be dropping him off after 4 hours. I hope you know what you're doing." Nolan turned to the man. "All right, get on board." Thank you so much." Moments into settling down, Nolan set sail. The skies were gloomy, and it seemed the weather would only be getting worse. He just hoped they would get through this journey without much trouble. "I'm really fortunate that I found you guys, or else I don't think I would have made it back. People don't usually go in this direction, and then in this weather. But where are you headed to?" "The Winter Festival of Lights will be held in the next city. We're going to celebrate there." Strange. I wasn't aware of a winter festival going on. Throughout the morning, the three sailed down the river with little turbulence. But sometime in the afternoon, the wind started to pick up and the snow got heavier. Heath looked out as the cold waves grew tall across the river. The woods that surrounded the lake on both sides were covered in a thick layer of snow and frost. He could see the pines rustle in the strong winds. Some branches toppled over on the ground. Not even a single animal could be spotted out in this freezing weather. If it weren't for this convertible top, we wouldn't have been able to survive out here in this weather. Yes, but the currents have slowed us down quite a bit. All of a sudden, The boat took a jolting shake. Heath held onto the seats as the luggages in the back tumbled over and something strange fell out. He stared at shackles and chains on the floor. What was this? The journey turned out long and exhausting. What was to take 4 hours took nearly 7 hours for them to reach, and now it was almost sunset. All right, you can get off here. We have to go. Thank you so much again. But how will you two go in this weather? It's really not safe to travel at night, especially on nights like this. Why don't you lodge at my cabin and set off tomorrow morning, when the weather is better? No, we'll manage. Ivania suddenly felt a strong pain in the pit of her stomach. She nervously looked at Nolan. Nolan, we need to hurry. We have to leave. Okay. Heath picked up his suitcase and was about to leave. Oh, I forgot. All of a sudden, feeling a heavy hit on his head, everything went dark in front of Nolan, and he fell off the boat. Nolan! For the past few months, young women had been going missing around Klamath Falls. The Klamath River ran along the city, bordered by some small towns and numerous islets. Heath Burton then traveled out here, far from populace, and lodged in a cabin on one of these uninhabited islands. He was a medical doctor, but had an overwhelming obsession for women. This islet had become his safe haven, from where he traveled to town, sometimes alluring or sometimes abducting young women and bringing them back here to play his own dirty games and experiments. But last time, his victim managed to escape. You thought you could take my boat and run away from me? No. Please, let me go. Don't do this to me. You forgot the keys. The young woman had managed to hit Heath over the head and render him unconscious before she set sail back to town. However, before she could reach anywhere near safety, Heath had regained his senses. He took the rod and went to hit her. But in the clash, the boat had gotten damaged. That night, Heath took the young woman's life and threw her into the waters before he barely managed to reach the shore with the damaged boat. I need another boat. Nolan! Ivania immediately jumped off the boat to her husband, trying to get him onto the bank. Heath got down, chuckling seeing his condition, no longer in the state to speak nor move. Do you think I'm stupid? You two were attending a winter festival with these shackles and chains? What dirty games are you up to? Ivania looked at Heath in disgust and rage, as her eyes teared up. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. You're right. I thought tonight would be disappointing. But then I saw you. The only obstacle in my way was your husband, and I don't think he'll be back in his senses anytime soon, Heath said as he approached Ivania. Don't come near me. As Heath laughed, Ivania got up and ran into the forest. Good. Run. Otherwise, it's not fun. Running after Ivania, Heath laughed menacingly. Where are you going to go? You're in my abode. There's no place to hide. You can scream, you can shout, but you'll never escape. The snow and the wind felt like they were piercing through Ivania's skin as she ran. She knew she had to divert him, at least for the time being. Hearing Heath, Ivania looked up at the skies. The last rays of sunlight faded away, leaving them in darkness. Heath had been running through the pines, searching for Ivania. Where are you? It's only time till I find you. As he scanned the trees, his eyes stopped at seeing her. He chuckled in surprise. Ivania stood still in her place. Not a word, not a movement. So you've finally come to your senses. He walked towards her, but just as he was to get hold of her, all of a sudden, Ivania turned and charged at him. He'd stepped back, seeing her eyes red, her skin flushed. She had become something else. And Ivania went rogue. She unleashed herself of the vicious contamination that ran in her blood, this infection that caused her to have an insatiable hunger for flesh as day turned to night. And now it was time to content herself. Ivania and Nolan both worked at BI Pharmaceuticals in California. They were among the top scientists in the company, but one incident had changed their lives forever. Dr. Colton, one of their colleagues, was the reason behind Ivania's condition. He carried a contamination in his blood that caused him to have an insatiable hunger, urged him to devour raw flesh, feast on blood, and Ivania had become infected by his bad blood. Since then, she and Nolan have been on the run, fleeing from people, not to save themselves, but to save others from Ivania. Ivania didn't want to be like this, but when the sun set, there was no stopping her. She lost all control. She had to satisfy her hunger, and her urges made her unstoppable. The only thing that had ever been able to tame her was Nolan, the only person who understood her and protected her from this evil nature she had acquired since the day she became infected. And now they were on their way to find Dr. Colton, who had been contaminating others, gathering people he considered his own, people who had become rogue and evil, preying on innocent lives for their own satisfaction. Having returned to his senses, Nolan got up panicked to realize Ivania wasn't with him. Where is she? Ivania. Hearing his voice, Ivania froze and turned around. Looking into his eyes, she crawled to him and gave herself up. Early the next morning, Ivania woke up. She was on the boat. Once again, staring at the blood all over her clothes. What had she done? Nolan, she called, trembling. Don't worry, everything will be fine. We've reached Dr. Colton's island.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.